Fear Not, Episode 75. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today, you and I are going to be joined by kbroekhuis. Hey, Kendra, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Are you ready to fear not today?
Yes, I sure am.
Kendra has been writing ever since she and her husband spent 3 years living overseas in Guatemala. She finds joy in therapy and writing, as it is a way to process whatever is happening in their lives, like the move overseas to a place of deep poverty, her begrudging first passage into motherhood, their move and transition back to the United States, and the devastating loss of their second baby. Kendra desires to be an encourager to all women honest enough to admit their struggles and celebrate their greatest joys in life. Her first book, Here Goes Nothing, an introvert's reckless attempt to love her neighbor, highlights her 30-day journey to recognize the Lord's I love yous in her daily life, as well as her somewhat awkward attempts to be the Lord's I love yous to her neighbors. Kendra, can you take a few moments to fill in the gaps and maybe also give us a little bit more of a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Besides those things listed there, my husband and I now live and work in the city of Milwaukee, and we have 2 children, technically 3, but we take care of a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old boy and girl. And besides that, my husband is a high school science teacher.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. And Kendra, would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears you've had to face?
I think that one of the biggest fears I've had to face, I feel like have struggled through many of them, but one that comes to mind is the fear of realizing that I am not in control of my life. I am what I like to call a control enthusiast because I think it's a lot nicer than saying I'm a control freak. And so I find it hard to think about the fact that I can do my best to make plans and I can do my best to achieve my dreams and raise my kids and keep everyone in my family safe, but ultimately that I'm not in control of that outcome.
So how do you deal with that fear?
One way that I deal with that fear, I guess I'm going to share a little bit about the most intense time that I faced that fear was when we lost our second baby. So we found out at our 20-week ultrasound that our baby was not developing well and that she was not expected to live. And I carried her for 13 more weeks, and then she passed away, and I gave birth to her stillborn. And so beyond the pain of that deep grief, I struggled with a lot of fear during that time that we were waiting to see if our daughter would live, and also just recognizing after she passed away that we weren't spared from this kind of pain, and so I was afraid of the other bad things that could possibly happen to my husband or our daughter at the time. And so it felt like this big wake-up call that my life is not in my own hands, and that was hard to handle as a control enthusiast, I would say. So I wouldn't say that I've been necessarily cured of this fear, but I think it's good with that when I recognize that situations are out of my control. The biggest thing I would say is, as a Christian, I really cling to my faith in Jesus. I believe that while I'm not in control, that God is, and so that just gives me hope. And that gives me something to hold on to when I feel afraid so that I can continue to live in spite of my fear.
Is there a particular scripture that you turn to?
A scripture that I really love is Psalm 34, verse 18. It says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. I think at times people want you to focus on the fact that God has a plan, which is true. But I think that when we're in that really, really deep heartache, it has often helped me to just think about the fact that God is close to me, that even when things aren't going as I plan them, and when that hurts, when that breaks your heart and really just shatters what you thought your life was supposed to be like or going to be like, it just helps me to know that God is close to me and carrying me through those times.
Do you have other resources that you've come across that have helped you, besides the Bible, to help you face fear that you might be able to share with us today?
One book that I really loved that I read really soon after our daughter passed away was a book called Holding On to Hope by Nancy Guthrie. Because I learned through grieving our daughter that grief feels a lot like fear. Again, when you realize that you're not in control, and that that means other things are vulnerable to the bad things that happen in this world as well, that you just need to remember that there's hope beyond our pain and beyond what we think that we can control. And so this book called Holding On to Hope by Nancy Guthrie just really helped me strengthen my faith through our loss, and helped me to find the purpose of the pain that I was going through, and just helped me recognize the hope that we have beyond our pain.
Are you ready for the speed run?
Yes, I am.
What person, whether they be fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
I would say the person that's made the most impact on my life as a Christian, again, is Jesus. And so his love is the deep love that drives out the fear that I have. And then I would also say besides Jesus, I feel like that's sometimes I feel like that's the answer I'm supposed to say, but that is true. And also I would say my husband, because my husband has been with me through our deep grief and has walked by me in those times that I've felt afraid as well. So I would say my husband as well.
And if you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would you change?
Oh, as I sit here while my two kids are napping, I think, maybe this sounds superficial, but I think it would be great if the whole world took naps every afternoon, and that we could have a guaranteed quiet time during the day. But I think that's my inner introvert talking. I really appreciate my quiet time that I can have on my own.
What's your biggest weakness?
Oh, I think my biggest weakness is related to my fears, and kind of wrapped up in the pride of wanting to be able to control my circumstances, and then also worrying about the pride of, how things turn out. Is that reflective of me? So worrying about the outcomes of what I do, are they seen as a success or a failure? And so then I get wrapped up in my own pride of wanting to look like a success in the world's eyes.
What's your biggest strength?
I think that my biggest strength is trying to see the world from other people's perspective. I really value trying to think about how other people see situations, so that I'm not only focused on how a situation affects me, but trying to see how it affects other people involved as well.
And if you could only have one book to read, what book would that be?
That would definitely be the Bible. There's no other book that has affected my life in such a way, and has found a way to impact even just the mundane and ordinary moments of my day.
Do you have a favorite sound?
My favorite sound, I was just thinking about this earlier. I really love the sound of my two kids playing together when they're getting along and laughing and making each other laugh. I think that's just the sweetest thing to hear.
And Kendra, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I love email. That's probably my favorite way to connect. So my email is kbroekhuis@gmail.com, and that's probably the fastest way to get a hold of me.
And Kendra, what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
I think that for someone who is struggling with fear, or for someone who is struggling to let go of things that they want to happen in their life, I think that it's really good to remember that we are not in control, and that we can do our best, and that we can try to follow the wisdom that we're given in our everyday lives and in the Bible, and yet we need to remember that our lives are not in our own hands, and so it's best to really just to trust God and to pray that His will be done, because He knows what's best for us and has our best in mind, even when it's hard to understand and when our circumstances are making us feel otherwise.
Great words of wisdom. And I want to thank you, Kendra, for coming on the show today and sharing your story, your experience, your wisdom, and your time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Billy.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.